Took a minute to get set up there. Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is receptivity. I'm excited to be digging in actually to this notion of receptivity and how our receptivity is our ability, cultivating the ability to receive, and cultivating the ability to receive is a precursor to abundance. So let's just talk about that. But before we get started, let's just settle in for a minute and take a deep breath in and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp, vital oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells and all your organs. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, any stress, any negativity, any toxins. And now let's take another deep breath in and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up, electrifying and energizing you from the inside out. Every cell lighting and emanating and illuminating all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, and connecting you with the world beyond. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Really softly rub your fingers against your palms and feel the deliciousness. Allow yourself to really sink in and feel the deliciousness of that sensation. And bring yourselves present right here, right now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Friday morning, and today we're talking about receptivity. And we're talking about it especially in the context of opening ourselves to receive. When we talk about, good morning, Roslyn. Happy Friday to you. So glad you're here this morning. And we're talking about receptivity and cultivating this openness of heart and mind to receive. And that means receiving ideas, being receptive to new ideas. It means being willing to receive the gifts and the bounty of life, and gifts that we ask for. You know, so many of us are desiring greater abundance, and in order to have that abundance, we first need to be willing and able and open to receiving. And I know that that's actually the sticking point for a lot of people. Good morning, Tammy. So glad to have you here. And Maggie is too. So I know that so many of the folks that join me every day that are part of this wonderful growing community are healer type people, and definitely spiritually minded people, and as such are inclined to be givers. And as givers, we often, what I've noticed anyway with a lot of sensitives and healer type people, is that we tend to be pretty good at giving and not so great at receiving. And so this cultivation of receptivity is something that is a really important practice and vantage point for us to be having a greater exchange with life. So if energy is always going one way without some kind of replenishment, then it's obviously out of balance. Good morning, Ibrahim. Welcome. Oh, wow, Bethlehem. Wonderful to have you here. Welcome. So we're talking about receptivity, and particularly in the context of cultivating a willingness to receive. And one of the things, as I think about giving and receiving, for all those givers amongst us, it feels good to give, right? It feels good to give as long as you're giving because you're choosing to give rather than feeling compelled to give or feeling burdened by giving. So I'm going to stay in the heartfelt openness of giving to talk about this topic. So it feels good to give. Now, when we don't receive from others, we're denying them that good feeling, right? If we're not letting other people give to us, then they're not getting the benefit of being able to give open-heartedly. And so when we receive, when we have this ongoing exchange, this flow, uh, it's a much more natural dynamic. It's a give, instead of a give and take, it's a give and give, and give and receive and give, and as we give we receive, etc., etc. So if we can cultivate this openness, because not receiving, not having this willingness, this invitation, this receptivity is creating a resistance, isn't it? Where we're resisting the energy that's coming our way, by not having the willingness to receive it. So when somebody is generously offering something open-heartedly, not with contingencies, per se, then the act of receiving that graciously, even if it's something like a compliment, the act of receiving it graciously is allowing that energy to continue moving, right? If I resist that, if I say no, if I don't receive that, if I'm not receptive to that, then there's a resistance that's created. And also, how does that make the other person feel? So when somebody has refused your generosity, how does that feel? It kind of backs up, right? So it's not a great feeling for you, and it's probably not a great feeling for them either, right? Or for you when you don't receive. So this notion of keeping the energy moving and allowing our open-hearted receptivity is a precursor to being able to receive. Obviously, if you're trying to pour water into a closed jar, it's the jar is never going to get full of water, right? And so many of us are asking for abundance, and yet we're not in this receptive mode. So how can we cultivate this receptivity? I think one of the ways that we can do that is by presencing ourselves to our existing blessings and gifts. So what does that mean? What came to mind for me as I was saying that is nature, being in nature, and really just drinking in the magnificence, drinking in the wonder and the awe and the beauty of nature, just being present in this environment. And that is cultivating a receptivity, as I said, drinking it in, receiving it. And that's a practice that we can cultivate to allow ourselves to receive. Open heart, open mind. Rosalind says, allowing the energy to continue. I like that. When people say thank you and bow their head, what does bowing the head gesture mean? I guess that depends on the individual. I'm not sure. Although what comes to mind as a hypothesis, I really have no idea if this is true or not, but we're accustomed to bowing our head in prayer. So maybe it's like, thank you. There's sort of a prayer and a sacredness about, or acknowledging the sacredness of that gift, perhaps. Maybe that's what the bowing of the head is. I'm just putting it out there because I certainly don't know, but it would make sense, and also maybe when we bow our head, it's humbling ourselves, to be gracious, perhaps, in receiving that gift, and to be honoring someone else for their generosity or benevolence. I don't know, but that's an interesting question. And it's interesting to think about that dynamic, like when we receive, maybe it's a way of saying thanks, because we, again, bow our heads in prayer. Maybe it's a way of saying thank you in a I want to say pious, but that's not really the right word, because we're not talking about religious, but in a reverent way. So when we start acknowledging all the bounty that we experience, we're opening our heart, we're practicing receptivity, right? Because we're allowing those gifts to register for us in a heartfelt way and in a conscious way. So by calling in um, and experiencing the gifts that we have, what are we doing? We're sort of exercising those receptivity muscles that enable us to call in even more of that abundance and receptivity to new ideas. So let's say we're in a situation and are feeling stuck, and the mind is going round and round and round and doing its thing to try and resolve a situation, but oftentimes gets caught in this endless loop. And so what we can cultivate is a receptivity for a new idea. And how do we do that? Good morning, Dino. So glad to have you here. We're talking about receptivity and cultivating receptivity as sort of a precursor to abundance and prosperity and new ideas. So I've noticed the way that I come up with the topics for these mornings is literally very much like right before we start, unless there's an idea that comes up and it's like, oh, got to talk about that. Otherwise, right before I start every morning, like 15-20 minutes before I start every morning, I sit and wait to receive an idea. And that's actually what happened this morning. So I will sit there and I'll say, okay, so what's this morning's topic? And I have practiced this enough that I have that muscle working, that I'm receptive to whatever idea comes. And I think initially what I did, and I still do, is I calm myself. I take a breath, I close my eyes, and I clear my mind, and an idea pops into my head. I might have ideas, and I'll see, is that it, and it may or may not feel like it's the right thing. When the right thing shows up, I know it's the right thing because I feel it, because I'm being receptive with open heart and open mind. And so this is something that we can cultivate. That's a very prescribed situation, but I believe that when we cultivate that skill and I do believe it's a skill or habit, when we cultivate that ability in one area, we're able to let it bubble over into another. So when I can be receptive for the topics for our talks, I can also carry that over to perhaps inspiration around a situation, a solution, another pathway in a circumstance that I might find myself. So, how do we cultivate receptivity? What is receptivity? Receptivity is a lack of resistance. And so, as we allow ourselves to release the resistance that's in our bodies, I don't know about you, but I tend to carry tension in my shoulders and my upper back and in my neck. And so, if I am consciously intending to relax and cultivate receptivity, what I notice is that I put my attention on the tension in my body and release it. So I will notice what's happening in my shoulders, in my neck, and just allow that to release. And I'll notice what's happening with my breath. Is my breath up in my upper chest? Am I breathing deeply? Am I breathing shallowly? Am I breathing in my belly? Most often, I'm not breathing very deeply before I am putting myself in a receptive state. To be in a receptive state for me, what I notice is that when I allow myself to breathe more deeply into my belly and relax the tension in my body, then there's more receptivity. Why? There's less resistance. This tension, there's less tension, there's more ease, more openness, more flow. So these are things that all of us can do, is put our attention when we're looking to be more receptive. We can put our attention on where we're meeting resistance in our minds, in our bodies, in our spirits, in our emotions, and just allow that resistance to lessen and lessen and lessen and fall away. So in terms of receptivity, what are you noticing? Because I notice that a lot of, here's a good topic to talk about, is money, right? Money is often an issue for people. And part of what happens in our conversations around money is that we're really not receptive. We're not cultivating the open-hearted, open-minded ability to receive money, because we're cultivating conversations about the lack of it. So we're talking about how we don't have it, or how we need it, and when we need something, it means there's a lack of that thing, right? And I understand, believe me, I've been there more times than I can count. I understand what it's like to be in a position when you're wondering how you're going to meet your expenses, and there's this panic that sets in, and this whole conversation about not having enough money, and that is resistance to receiving, isn't it? That's a lack of receptivity, because what I'm putting out in the world is I don't have. And so the world is saying, okay. And in those moments, that's when it's a really great time. And before those moments, when it's such an extreme state, it's a really great time to practice the receptivity. And the receptivity is cultivated by noticing the abundance that we already are subject to, that is everywhere all the time. And we discount those things because it doesn't look exactly like the abundance that we're desiring in this moment, or that we're needing, or that we're wanting, meaning it's missing in this moment. So in terms of manifesting, we know that the way to manifest things is to be in the frequency of that which we, of the having of those things. So I may not have money, for example, but, or you may not have money, but look at all these amazing experiences and things that are present in the world that we can enjoy and appreciate and really, really, really receive. And by really, really receiving those experiences, I'm not wanting to use the word things, because it's, abundance is not just about material things by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, abundance is an internal state, and that's really what we're talking about, is cultivating the receptivity and the experience of abundance. By cultivating that experience of abundance and feeling that richness inside, we are magnetizing more abundance to ourselves, right? Because like attracts like, in a way, in this energetic way. So the frequency, the frequency that we are emanating is the frequency we attract. So if we're emanating lack and fear, then of course that's what we're going to get. If we're emanating fullness and abundance and gratitude, appreciation, the richness inside, then that's what we're going to attract. Robert says, hi, Robert. So glad to have you here. Wonderful explanation. Thank you. I'm so glad you think so. That's awesome. Wonderful to have you here. So I'm hearing myself say so a lot. I'm going to look at being more alert to that. Receptivity. Receptivity. What does it look like to be receptive to new ideas? This is a really important thing for us to be looking at in this time that has been so factioned and divisive, that we get to look at being open and open-hearted and open-minded to ideas from others in order to create a richer connection. So people may have radically different perspectives, and you may have opinions and judgments about their perspectives. And at the same time, there is a way to be receptive, to receive these ideas not as something that you need to take on, but as that person expressing who they are. And there's a gift that is available by doing that as the giver and as the receiver. There's a gift available in creating those bridges to create understanding with others, even if they're very different and their perspectives are very different. So being receptive to an idea doesn't mean you have to take that idea on necessarily. It means that you're able to receive it. And if I receive something, I don't have to keep holding it. I can put it down. I can give it away. I can do any number of things with that that thing, and I can do the same with ideas. I think that one of the challenges of listening to people that have different ideas is the fear that their ideas are threatening to our own. And it would be a great thing for us to get over that in order to better connect with other human beings and to reach a deeper understanding. It is possible for people with radically different ideas to communicate. You might not be best friends, but cultivating the connection cultivates potential evolution of ideas on all sides. So that's an important place for us to be looking, I think, for our cultural evolution, to be listening beyond the words. So when we are receptive with heart and mind, we can receive the maybe the heart of the person that is speaking and operate from that level of connection. Well, that brings us to the end of this morning, receptivity. I invite you to look at your resistance to receptivity. When you find it, like, think about receptivity, and if you notice there's resistance, look at that. Is it that you don't feel worthy of receiving? Is it that you are concerned about not being able to stand on your own? So if somebody else offers a helping hand, that means something about you not being enough, or you being weak, or something crazy like that. Let's look at our patterns around receiving and open our hearts and our minds to being receptive, so that we can enjoy the bounty that's here for all of us. And Rosalind says, have a good weekend. Thank you, Mira and Maggie. Maggie is burrowed under my scarf here. Here she is. Like, I guess she's a little chilled this morning. Have a great, great weekend. I want to thank you all for being here and joining in these conversations. I so appreciate the connection with you, and I have lots and lots of love and appreciation. So I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. And I invite you to check out all the wonderful programming on Enlightened World Network and the wonderful community there. Until next time, have a great weekend and allow yourself the gift of receptivity.